It's like we saw this. We set up last year a international network with Vandana Shiva, Hans Herren, Steve Rye, Renate Kunast, Tom Newmark, and myself. The idea is, how do we create a organization that can help the global grassroots change the conversation around the climate and get rolling, okay? So with this video, what we did immediately when we saw it is we said, this is the best thing we've ever seen in 4.5 minutes, explaining something that's pretty complicated. So our Mexico Bureau translated it and subtitled it into Spanish, right? So now we're translating it to an audience in Latin America in Spain that would never have seen it if it were just in English. And what we started realizing when we started networking, our founding meeting of Regeneration International, we brought together 60 leading activists from 22 countries. And one of the themes that kept coming up was, look, this is one problem that we can't solve except with the participation of the global grassroots. This is not a USA issue. It doesn't matter what we do in the United States, in a way. You know, if the rest of the world will start regenerating, you know, we can solve this problem. So who's going to implement this? Well, it's not a bunch of, you know, people in Silicon Valley. This is like 500 million small farmers and ranchers around the world, you know, forest dwellers, pastoralists, you know, are going to implement this if it gets implemented, and that's it, you know. At this conference, one of the things we heard is like from our comrades who speak Portuguese in Brazil or Portugal, they said, you know what, we don't have hardly anything in Portuguese about this yet. Why don't you translate stuff from English into Portuguese? And by the way, you guys have no idea that the organic movement in Brazil is probably the most advanced organic movement in the world, you know? You don't have any idea what we're doing, you know? And we need this global solidarity, you know, in every language. So one thing we're going to do with Regeneration International is we're going to pick out really good pieces like this video or like this Jack Kittredge soil carbon restoration, and we're going to translate it into all the major languages of the world, you know? And we're also building a media and public relations firm so that we can look at the global landscape of the media. I want to know every website in the world that's open to this analysis. I want to know the alternative media, and I want to know the mass media, because the mass media in a lot of countries is still open on this issue, right? And so we need to map, and I want to know the organizations in every country in the world that are starting to move this way. They're open to this. I want to know who the movers and shakers are. I want to be able to track, and you can do all this these days with off-the-shelf software, by the way. I want to track what are the themes in social media in Russia, in China, in Japan. What are the openings? Because we have to build, you know, in the 1850s, Karl Marx and people started talking about this idea of the new international, right? And that working people and peasants of the world were going to rise up together and create a new system, right? And they were serious about it, and it had a great idealistic impetus. But that was a long time ago, and we still don't have this global international we need, right? We've got to build it, and seriously build it, and we can use the terminology regeneration is a great term. Regeneración in Spanish, you know, it's very similar in a bunch of languages, but it's universal. This concept that we can go from where we are now, the innate capacity of soils, of plants, of trees, of people, of communities, and draw out the good part, you know. But as Miguel Altieri pointed this morning, the flaw in this plan is that corporate agribusiness and the energy conglomerates, you know, and the war profiteers control the world. So we're going to have to take down this system of big oil, big coal, big military. But the nice thing about this is this movement can go from the grassroots up. We can be extremely subversive, but still talk to people. One group I'd like to just bring up, then I'll shut up. Ranchers. Ranchers and environmentalists and organic consumer advocates have basically been at one another's throats. You know, most ranchers in the United States, they don't want to talk about the climate crisis, you know. But what we do agree on with these ranchers is A, they work hard, B, they care about their animals, C, they feel terrible when their animals go to the auction barn and the only people buying them, you know, are Cargill, you know, or JBS or Tyson or one of those who are taking their animals that were grazing on the land off to prison, you know, to fatten them up with GMO grains, to take what was, you know, what could have been healthy meat and turn it into a toxic substance, right? The ranchers agree with us on that. And you ask them, well, what would cause you to change this? Well, if we're at the auction paying more money, rewarding them for doing things right, we got an ally there, you know? And we have to start looking at all these issues. Democrats, Republicans, Greens, Independents. The bottom line is if we don't break through these divisions between us, you know, we're not going to be able to build the kind of coalition and power we need. So wherever we're working, let's figure out how we connect the dots to the other people. But in the United States especially, we have this weakness of not being international enough in our perspective. This is a global problem with a global solution, you know, and it's us who have to begin this process. The good news is we're building a bandwagon that is so important that once it gets rolling, it's going to have its own momentum. So if you feel like I do, I've only got 20 years left as a full-time activist, but at the end of 20 years, we're going to win.
Thanks, Ronnie. I'll take your questions in a second.